election, but we are always caught flat-footed. But now, this time round, we are hoping that the process will be smooth. We have 90 days, and a matter of fact, the selection panel has exactly 90 days to have actually reported in regards to the same. But allow me to first of all air the clip that ran last night, in regards to the CJ, what she said about what the commissioners should strive to endeavor to do. Let's first of all listen in.
I, Adams Olo,
having been appointed as a member of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Selection Panel.
Minutes after 9 o'clock Monday morning, members of the new IEBC selection panel were sworn in an event witnessed by Chief Justice Martha Koome. Those who took the oath of office were Professor Adams Olo, Nelson Makanda, Ambassador Koki Moli, Evans Misati, Nicodemus Bore Kipchirchir, Andrew Tanoi Kipkoech, and Linda Kiomegaki, while two other members, Fatma Saman and Carol Kituku, missed the occasion. The 9-member selection panel, comprising representatives of various organs, including political parties, Interreligious Council, and the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, will have 90 days to find the next chairman and commissioners of the IEBC. Speaking after the exercise, Chief Justice Martha Koome challenged the panel to seek the best, like Caesar's wife.
The future of our democracy depends on the integrity of the men and women you select to lead the IEBC. The commissioners you appoint must be individuals of untainted credibility.
While expressing her disappointment at the lack of commissioners, which had denied IEBC the ability to execute its mandate for the last 2 years, the CJ said there is need for a team that must inspire trust and confidence among Kenyans.
Your guiding principle must be merit and merit alone. The individuals you select must inspire confidence in the electoral process and uphold the values of transparency, accountability, and inclusivity. Kenyans are watching, and the trust they place in our institutions will be determined by the integrity of the choices you make.
Very well, and for avoidance of doubt, that has been CJ Martha Koome yesterday morning during the swearing in of the 9 members. 2 were not sworn in, but I'm sure they will be sworn in regards to the Secretariat and more so in the Secretaries for the Commission. That is a discussion that we'll be having for the next 50 minutes or so in regards to the IEBC and its formulation. And in studio, I'm not alone. I'm joined by 3 experts in regards to matters governance. Beginning from my immediate left, we have Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Dr. Isaac Hassan is a leadership and governance expert. Just next to him, we have Oscar Omondi. Oscar Omondi is a political scientist. He's also a university don. And next to Oscar, we also have Counsel Shadrach Wambui. Wambui is an advocate of the High Court and also a constitutional lawyer. Wambui, Oscar, and Harun, good morning.
Morning.
Allow me to say Happy New Year, because I've only seen, we've only had a show with Isaac.
Yes, I'm still receiving those greetings. Happy New Year.
Let me begin with you, Wakili.
Yes.
There was an objection that had been filed in Kiambu Law Courts in regards to the selection panel.
Yes.
And the judge there did dismiss it. And something that come out of that is that we are always caught flat-footed when it comes to electoral matters and the IEBC. And most of them have exited either prematurely or disgraced. I'm talking about when we go back to, we had Chisoni, we had Zacchaeus Chisoni, we also had Isaac Hassan. Not this one, but the other one. And even we had Chebukati. Chebukati is praised and also condemned in equal measures.
Yes.
Why are we always caught flat-footed? And when it comes to matters judicial, this is something that should have been dispensed a long time ago.
Well, thank you, Troy, for the invitation, and good morning to the viewers and the listeners at home. Well, there are 2 ways of looking at it. First, we have the political process and the legal process in itself. The political process is guided by the IEBC Act, and the IEBC Act tries to guide us in a manner that we do not create a vacuum. In fact, because the expiry of the term of some of these members or men and women who serve as our commissioners in the IEBC is one that is known by law. So the law tries to prescribe a formula in which we should deal with the appointment of fresh commissioners long before the expiry of those that are in office has come to pass. So if we are to follow the process that is prescribed under the IEBC Act, it means that we might never have a situation like the one we have had to endure, where we are having a commissioner or a body which is called the IEBC as a body, the constitutional body, without its commissioners. Because the law has prescribed a formula that we need to start doing the recruitment 6 months before the expiry of those, the term of those that are in office. So that is a prescription that is set in law. So I think we have failed in the political process, because that is a process that should be spearheaded by the president. And in fact, the wording of the law is that the president shall lead in the appointment of, some of these, the selection panel that shall ultimately come up with some of the replacement of the commissioners that we have. Now, turning to the legal question, we've been seeing a back and forth in court. It began with the dispute about the appointment of the Ambassador Koki Muli as against Dr. Augustine Muli. And then after the determination of that dispute, of course, which led to a fresh or a start of that process that ultimately led to the appointment of the Ambassador Koki Muli, we had another dispute again in Kiambu, the one that was recently thrown out of the window. And some of these disputes, you need to understand the merits or otherwise of these cases. And the question that was taken before the Kiambu court, before my Lady Justice Dora Chepkwony, was that the selection of these 9 members, the 9 men and 9 the women and men who now form the selection panel, there was a question that we have 2 Kalenjins and we have 2 Kambas. So for that reason, the petitioner called to question, the ethnic composition of this panel, because we need the Constitution proposes that we need to have a selection of a panel that is the face of the Republic of Kenya, just the one that we are having here. This is the face of the Republic of Kenya. But now, when the court reviewed that nomination process, there is the powers that is given to some people. We call it the ministerial power and the discretional power. So the ministerial power, the ministerial power is when we have a law saying you need to appoint a man. So you cannot appoint a woman, because the law has given you specific demands. You need to appoint a man. But discretional power is you need to appoint a person to fill that position. So the person appointing has the discretion of appointing either a man or a woman. And that is what now the court said, in view of that challenge, well, the people who are doing the appointment ought to have had this in mind, even as I understand that they have the discretional power of choosing whoever they want to be their representative. Secondly, the petitioner also challenged and said that, you see, the panelist, that panelist of about 9 men and women, that panel does not have a representative of persons living with disability. And of course, our Constitution now allows us or demands, actually it's a demand that is made by the Constitution, that we need to factor in persons living with disability when it comes to the appointment. But now the court said, your challenge is very abstract. You're not telling us that there is one person living with a disability in the WIPA or in the Azimio One Kenya Alliance as a coalition, or the Kenya Kwanza as a coalition, or the Parliamentary Service Commission. Okay. You have not mentioned one person who is living with a disability that was discriminated. Okay, just a minute. It was dismissed.
Apologies, Wakili. We have to cross over to the Integrity Center, where the CEO, Abdi Ahmed, is currently issuing a report in regards to the EACC that is being covered by my colleague Abdi at EACC Integrity Center. Let's first of all hear what he has to say.
Corruptly acquired assets acts in 3 different ways. One, it is a way of restituting assets to the rightful owners, who are the public. It is also a way of punishing the suspects for stealing assets. And finally, it is a preventive approach in that it dissuades would-be public officers from stealing public assets, because at the end of the day, if they realize that these assets will be recovered, they may not take the pain of stealing the assets, because eventually they will realize that they will lose those assets. Finally, let me also comment on the charts that were shared with us. When the Director of Preventive Services was presenting, he told us that 42% of the reports that we receive at the Commission are on bribery cases. In most cases, bribery is viewed as not serious corruption offenses. But when you look at the statistics that were given and shared with us, you realize that this is actually a major concern for members of the public, for our country. And for that reason, the Commission will deliberately focus on ensuring that bribery at points of services is reduced, for the simple reason that the common ordinary person out there comes across this every other day, whether on the road, whether in pursuit of acquiring an ID card, whether in pursuit of trying to get a license, whether in pursuit of trying to sell their wares. This is an activity they come across every other day. And we cannot any longer term it as petty corruption. It is actually what concerns the ordinary person. If you ask the ordinary person what corruption is, to them actually it is bribery. We will pursue with the same vigor high impact, high value corruption cases. But this is an area where we want to also focus on, so that we make services more available to our people without extortion, without them being extorted, or without them being asked to pay a bribe. You will also realize that when we are looking at the perception surveys every year, what we basically look at when you ask the ordinary person whether they have ever come across corruption, what they will tell you is they visited a public office and a public officer actually asked for a bribe. To them, that is what corruption is. And we must answer to the request, or rather to the demand of our people, and from the statistics of the report that was shared with us. Because if we don't respond to the facts and the statistics that are shared with us, and we concentrate only on high impact cases, then we will lose the focus. And for that good reason, many people will always, in many cases when we arrest people who have received bribe, will blame us for not going after the big fish, but for simply picking this small person. But that small person is actually the person who is causing a lot of inconvenience to the members of the public and to our people. And for that reason, and in order to make the services more available and more affordable to our people, we must be able to deal with these particular people. I know we have Huduma centers all across the country where all these services, most of the services have been put together. But even then, those places are also not safe from extortion and bribery. So for that reason, we will pursue that avenue with vigor, so that we also deal with that particular inconvenience and that particular offense. So with those...
That is a live feed from the Integrity Center, and there you can see the CEO of EACC, Abdi Mohamud, there giving or issuing the EACC performance report, and something that he has mentioned of all the reports that they are presented to the EACC, 42% are on bribery, something that he says has been on the rise, and they are also keen on ensuring that they also go for those who issue bribes, as also they go for the big fish. Just in case you joined us, this is News Check. We are looking at the IEBC. We were from EACC, now we are looking at IEBC, and especially now that we have the 9 members who have been tasked with ensuring that it is well constituted. Three gentlemen I have here in studio to help us drive that conversation. And before we crossed over to the Integrity Center, apologies for that, we are talking about the legal aspect of this process, where we were. And still, while you were finishing on your point, you could also touch on what happens if somebody appealed that decision from the Kiambu High Court.
Well, thank you. Now, Troy, what I was saying is the reason why we find ourselves in this murky and, unprecedented area or precedented times is largely because of the failure in the political class. The political class has a responsibility under law. They ought to have commenced the process of replacing the commissioners, Chebukati and the likes of Cherera, 6 months even before the expiry of their term. And when a vacancy was declared, they ought to have begun the process of replacing them, at least within 14 days. But now that did not take place. So we left, we had a vacuum, and then because of the vacuum, we had these legal controversies that now spilled over to the courts. Now, in court, we expect, of course, that the Supreme Court will have the final word. And until or unless we have an order that stops the process from moving forward, then we'll have to proceed. As we speak currently, after Dr. Augustine Muli lost at the High Court, when the court ordered for a fresh nomination of a representative from the minority member of the coalition of Azimio One Kenya Alliance, then he preferred an appeal at the Court of Appeal. That appeal is still pending. Now, he is not fortunate because he has not yet received an order to stop the selection panel from beginning its process. But should it be that he gets an order during the continuation of the process, because they have 90 days within which to do the selection. If he gets the order, then we'll have a stop of the process, then we'll have to wait. And if need be, or if we need now to extend the period within which the selection panel should do its work of selecting members of the commission, then our parliament will have a say in extending that time that they have been given under law. But as it is, as we speak, it is important that we clarify to the members of the public that we are living in a constitutional democracy. People have rights and fundamental freedoms to approach the court as and when they feel offended. And if the court is so advised that there is need to allow this individual who is aggrieved to ventilate his concerns, then the court will have to stop. The same thing that we saw in Kiambu. There was a stop in the process. Long after, we had a stop at the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal and before the High Court, before my Lady Justice Janet Mulwa. Yes.
And from the courts, Omondi, I'm looking at, let's go back to 2007, after the post-election chaos. There was the Kriegler report that recommended that we should be having an IEBC more than 2 years. Yes. So that, a lot of people don't realize that IEBC is so tasked with voter registration. We also have verification, boundaries, delimitation, and also 2027. Are we ready in the time frame that we have?
You've heard it from a legal perspective. There is a stop, then there will be a stop, then there can be a stop, and they will be stopped. You get me right? And that is the situation we are. We're just going round and round and round and round. We need to have a system where the legal process must stop at some level. Because, for example, when he explained these cases, what happened, this person with disability was not represented, and, it's always a problem. The next time I will tell you that my house help was not consulted, so I'm going to court to stop it. Get me right? So the thing is that issues of national concern, like this one, probably we should have a system where the Supreme Court has the jurisdiction to call that file and say, okay, this is a matter of national importance to us. For example, what is the impact of these stops created? What has happened for the last 3 years because you don't have a commission? Article 89 on boundaries and the diminution of boundaries of political constituencies should happen within not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years after an election. We are past that deadline. Now, the commission has gone, the secretariat has gone to Supreme Court again for advisory so that they request the High Court in case they can be added 1 year or so. they can be added 1 year probably by the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court adds them 1 year, that means that they have to do it by August. Because again, the same constitution says that if you do the delimitation 1 year to the election, it won't be effective in that particular election. Right. So the delimitation of boundaries is out of our control already. So the impact of these cases are generating a lot of things. Now, we should have a system where not every Tom, Dick, and Harry can be, as much as we respect rights of individuals. We have individual rights, yes, but they're matters of national concern. Magarini, Ugunja, and ODM, who was a nominated MP, who was elected, who was appointed to the executive body, who was nominated, and very many MCAs and very many places have not been, we've not done re-election. Secondly, I tell you what messed up our previous election. The Cherera 4 you're talking about, when were they brought into office? They were brought into office, I think, almost 4 months to the election. And you could see they never even dealt with the other commissioners. The 3 versus the 4, they remained like that, and it has remained like that till today. The Cherera 4 who came 4 months to the election, and the other 3 who were there had a working system. And they worked until after the Cherera 4, when we are now having the election, the Cherera 4 didn't even know where the tallying is happening, and they didn't know what was happening because of the time they were appointed. Now again, we have this panel, and Wakili here has promised us that if Muli gets his order, then we stop before 90 days. If we stop before 90 days, we are getting into the electioneering period. Yesterday I saw Kalonzo Musyoka saying that don't even move an inch. The secretary was not allowed even to buy a pen. That don't do any procurement. The secretary has to work. For example, they were buying procurement for training purposes. They want to train their people. You want to move into an election without people not trained because you're saying don't. And the same Kalonzo is saying that don't rig this election. The election will be rigged not because of anybody who is willing to rig the election, because unpreparedness of the IEBC. They're not prepared. So anybody who has to take advantage of that loophole of the fact that the referee is not prepared. The referee has malaria, and you're sure that the referee cannot run. So you can always time and run past the offside block and win unfairly, only because the referee is not prepared. We don't want that system to work. The stakeholders of the electoral process don't want it to work. All these bottlenecks are put by the same stakeholders. The candidates, I've one time worked as an RO, a returning officer for a political party. That was the most difficult thing to do because nobody, amongst those 10 candidates who are there, nobody wanted a fair process. These stakeholders must always be willing to have a fair process to give the referee easy time. All of them must be for a fair process. But if the stakeholders, for example now, I don't think if Gachagua and group want a fair process. I don't think if William Ruto and group want a fair process. I don't think anybody wants a fair process. Everybody wants to take advantage of the messes that IEBC will, so that they control government, so that we win elections unfairly. And it's not only Kenyan system.
But we can change that if we have a functional
judiciary
IEBC and judiciary as well.
Yes, this guy said stop. There will be a stop and another stop, another stop. Now they're saying Adam Solo, for example, who was sworn in. I've seen Adam Solo being sworn in.
Yes.
As an advisor to the president. I think it comes from probably comes from the wrong extraction, and it should not be in that panel. I'm giving a story. One day I watched. I don't know if you've watched Blood Diamond.
Yes.
There's an old mother that asked, why are they fighting in our village? Because he's shocked of what is happening in their village in Sierra Leone. And why are they fighting? Then a young boy tells him that they've discovered diamond here. That's why they're fighting here. And the old mother says, oh, I wish they don't discover oil because we'll all be dead. You get me right?
Yeah.
If selecting a panel has been this difficult I'm telling you, we won't have commissioners.
We will. We are hopeful. They have 90 days. We need to be optimistic about it. Allow me now to go to Doc. I'm looking at how we can, the electoral body can increase public trust and confidence. Why I'm saying this, we had Kivoito, we had Zacchaeus Chesoni, we had Isaac Hassan, we had Chebukati, who I can comfortably say that they both had praises and castigations in equal measures. How do we ensure that the electoral body is accountable and Kenyans also have faith and trust in the IEBC? Because it's the match referee, as Omondi has said.
Njue, I think from the script we read, electoral matters are driven by politicians. And electoral matters are also dishonored by politicians. And the reason as to why I'm saying that is that if we are based on certain principles and ideologies that governs our processes and no one can influence it, then public confidence can always come. The issue is, if I stand out here as a politician and see the things are not working in my favor, I will have to spoil the referee, which is IEBC. And IEBC remains the culprit of circumstance in every election. I don't think if anyone who has been, or a Kenyan who has been appointed to become a commissioner or an official within the secretariat of IEBC will want to do a dirty job if he will not going to be influenced by politicians, political parties leaders, or even the government of the day. The reason is that every entity who will want to use the IEBC will want to use them the wrong way. Nobody wants to use them the right, fair way that is accepted by everyone. So the confidence that we gain from the public is based on how we package our electioneering process. Both the political parties, political leaders, the government of the day, as well as the officials of IEBC. And from experience, I know the mistake or the burden always remains with the referee. Because if I am the one who is the politician who was interested in securing the government of the day and things have not worked in my favor, I condemn the referee. I don't know. Kenyans, I think, want to win. Everybody wants to win. And therefore, there is no need of having democracy where the public decide on who goes to win, where, and represent them. Here, the challenge is that if I lose, the referee is the one who has led to that. We have talked about almost 1.5 years the issue of Sava. What had Sava to do with IEBC, and yet IEBC have already read the results and the results were already public? What is the Sava all about? Will the Sava change any decision that the common public has already endorsed and people have already taken offices? So the issue of looking at issues related to the system, the Sava, aftermath of election is just to condemn the IEBC. But the bottom line is that the challenge we are facing is coming from the politicians, political parties, as well as the government of the day. Secondly, we do not have principles and rules that govern our ideology. Because people with no ideology and just wake up and make their own informed decision in regards to how best they will want to win an election, and even themselves have no credibility in front of the public. You know, it's all about who is looking for credibility and how do certain systems be trusted. If the commissioners are people of credibility and they have been given the task to do the work, let's wait for them to do their job. And we can assess individual-based situation where we will going to say, this particular commissioner has an issue. Because when they splitted in the last election, my colleague has mentioned the commissioners will have been appointed 6 months or so before their term expires. But I think in our in our previous arrangement, the 4 commissioners who bolted out of the system were designed in a manner that if the other 3 commissioners' term expires, these 4 still remains in office to have continuity as they appoint the other 2 commissioners as well as the chair. And that has been the arrangement that every institution always make, because there's always what is called a backup system. So where we had a challenge is that because they were appointed some few months, as my colleague has put it, to the election, and they never understood their role, they became fanatic of their masters who have employed them. And therefore they had to either deliver or go out. And therefore they did not go in there to represent Kenyans. They represented individuals or political parties whom they thought they will take them through the system and win and probably get an opportunity to become a cabinet secretary or a principal secretary in the government of the day or an ambassador. But that never worked. So the only option they had was to condemn themselves and destroy their career, because ideally you are not supposed to be splitting if you are a referee, and the collective decisions that you make must be systematic, must be convincing, and must be in the interest of your career as well as the job or the responsibility you are bestowed upon. And therefore, the challenge is our politicians, and the reason as to why we were not able to get any commissioner for almost 2 years now, to the extent that much of the constituencies that have lost their members of parliament, particularly in my area, we have a constituency just attached to Mandera West constituency, which is Banisha constituency, and he was the first member of parliament to lose his life, and yet that constituency, until to date, has not been represented. It's almost 2 years. So that is very unfair. And the process that we are scrambling on, where we are saying selection panel goes to court, we have not been done, stop on this. This is a monkey business that some people are doing. We do not want this monkey business. We want people to be served, and the only way to serve people so that we don't remain in constitutional crisis where we are now, we must have commissioners in office as soon as possible. Whoever come to that office, we don't care. We don't want constitutional crisis. I think the matter of people becoming an object of disturbance in the courts, where people just run with something to the court and they expect the court to solve their issues. That should be stopped.
Yes, and Wambo is still on the same. Allow me to pick from where Doc has left. Constituencies like Banisa, there are a number of Magarini, Ugunja, there are a number. And a practical example is Banisa, which is 2 years without a member of parliament. What remedies can they have? There are kids there who need bursaries. There are roads there who depend on the NGCDF. What remedies can they have?
Well, Troy, the truth of the matter is that time does not wait even for a king. It waits for no man. So, you know, it happens that in our constitutional democracy, what we have given to ourselves is a term of at least 5 years that is renewable upon your re-election. So, the Banisa, the Magarini, the Ugunja people they're actually tied down to the constitution, that their area member of representative or their area member of parliament ought to have been to be in office from the election of the year 2022 to 2027. So if it happens something in between, we are supposed to come up with something called a by-election so that we can have a replacement as quick as is possible. But because of the lack of these commissioners, the lack of the IEBC commissioners, then we've had what is called now the lacuna in representation, especially when it comes to even, we even have ward representatives that are not there. So for that reason, it is just but a sorry for now, because there is no way that we will have any person who will be elected in a by-election probably come the end of this year, serving for a term exceeding 2027. So that, we'll have people who think that because they lost their representative 1 year into the, after the election, then they will probably have to be compensated for the 3 years. So that they will want now to go for an election in the year 2030. It is not possible under law. So you just have to, just count your losses, know that time has gone, The only thing that we'll have is probably just go to the ballot, elect someone that is expeditious in the way in which he does his things very quickly, so that we can have the situation of these young kids salvaged. I know we have so many kids who depend on the CDF. I'm actually a beneficiary of the CDF, of Mathare.
The bursaries.
Yes, I was educated by those bursaries. And I know that there are children who have lost out for this number of years that their representatives have been away. But what can we do? If you are in class 8, you must have graduated. You will not wait until you have a representative in parliament so that your life moves forward. So these are some of the losses that we have to endure as a people because of the current constitutional dispensation. And I heard Daktari say, and it is true, while it is true that you know, some of these 4 commissioners that came in belatedly after or before the election of the year 2022, the likes of the Cherera, were supposed to come and fill in a gap, you know, following probably the expiry of the term, the 6-year period of Chebukati and the group. Well, that is true, but that in itself amounts now to remaking of the constitution or remaking of the law. The IEBC Act under the first schedule has prescribed that, you see, we need to be forward thinking. We need to look forward. We need to know that, you see, you've been appointed for 6 years. We know if you've been appointed today, you have until the 6 years. Before your 6 years come to an end, the president has a responsibility of helping us 6 months before to help us in replacing you, so that we do not have a situation as the one we are having, where people have resigned and the other ones, their term has expired. So we are now having a lacuna. We do not have commissioners. Nothing can move. We have areas that do not have a representative. So really, the law is what it is. These people who came up with this law thought very thoroughly about some of these consequences. Let us just adhere to those. Let us adhere to those laws. If the courts have been called upon to adjudicate on disputes, let us ban the midnight oil. We should not have a situation where the court is staying with a dispute for a long time. No. I think when it comes to election matters, and this is what we've been doing for the period of time I've been participating as a lawyer representing either someone who has lost or won an election or nominations. When we have these disputes, they are hard and determined expeditiously. We ban the midnight oil. At some point, we were even litigating on Saturdays and Sunday. We were doing it here at Milimani. So when we have some of these concerns, let us not just think of this issue as one matter just like any other. No, let us look at matters involving election, selection of IEBC commissioners and the likes as unique matters, matters that transcends, individual needs and desires. Then, if I return to what he said, the Don, is usually in the habit of throwing the spanner into the works. So he said we allow sometimes the Supreme Court to take up jurisdiction, and we should not allow these people sometimes to come and waste time. No, we are living in a constitutional democracy. We have opened our doors to every person and anybody who thinks he has been offended. We cannot close our doors to someone who thinks that a person of disability has not been represented in the selection panel. We cannot close our doors if someone thinks that, we have 2 Kalenjins and we have 2 Kambas in the panel. Let us give them an opportunity of ventilating their concern.
But Wakili,
yes.
Wakili, our constitution is superior to anything
of course
else that comes before it.
Yes.
And we must understand that anything that causes constitutional crisis
must
be addressed the way you say it, differently, uniquely, and must be dispensed as quickly as possible. If we don't do that, and we entertain people who are gimmicks and political fantasies, we will not get anywhere, and we'll be in crisis.
Perhaps I can chip in there. I think what they want to bring out is, for example, the presidential case is always taken to the Supreme Court. If it is started out at the High Court, then we will take forever, because High Court gives its direction. Somebody appeals at the Court of Appeal. We wait for the case to be heard and determined, because election matters should be expensed very fast. I think that is what they're trying to bring up.
Whatever is talking about banning the midnight oil at Milimani, it was not a case he doesn't want to mention here. It is Gachagua, which we agreed.
No. 2017. We are talking about 2017, not 2020, not 2024.
When the system wanted to dispense the issue of Gachagua, it was done very fast, cleared. Yes, the courts, people bought midnight oil, and we were Parliament. Go take it to Parliament. Senate, from Senate, let's go. It's moving. Public participation. Maliza Yaraka. Case, they were all there, paraded there, because they were dispensing this case. Imagine if we decided to deal with IEBC the same way we dealt with Gachagwa's case. Or imagine if we dealt with the case of IEBC the same way we dealt with the presidential petition case.
Yes.
This case needs 1 day. I'm telling you, boundaries delimitation must be done not less than 8 years or 12 years.
Yes.
It's a constitutional requirement. It's a big thing because there are constituencies that needs to be cut into two, for example. There are boundaries that need to be happened depending on the population's demands, because it is through those boundaries elimination that we see how we distribute resources to our people down there. You get that?
Maybe
so
Wamboi,
the thing is that when they can burn that midnight oil, I'm telling you, if the system is interested, and I will give you one question: who is going to be the chairman of the commission, of the electoral commission? Kama si mtu wetu, then nobody. That's what I'm telling you. This process with now running government where it is being run in social media.
Okay, maybe Wamboi can chip in there and tell us, maybe there's a way we can do, because if we are able to dispense presidential cases within a few days, the impeachment we saw took a few days. Elections touch everyone in the country. Why not expend them in the same speed as we expend presidential petitions?
Yes, Troy, I have subscribed to the school of thought that all matters elections, all matters that involve the greater public must be expedited. We must do them very quickly. That is the view I have always held. But even as we hold that view, we must always open our minds to the realities that we will always have people coming up with different challenges here and there. Whether the challenges are legitimate, whether they are stage managed, it is the constitutional democracy that we have given to ourselves. When you have someone who is a frivolous litigator, the law has mechanisms of barring someone who is a frivolous litigator. If you are in the habit of suing...
Oscar, let me finish.
Yes. Let me just complete my submissions. So the thing is this: when we have people with different concerns, let us address those concerns expeditiously. If someone is deemed or is thought to be a vexatious litigant, a vexatious litigant or a frivolous litigant is an individual who is just there for the sake of wasting the court's time. And we have an act of parliament that deals with declaring this person as vexatious. And you know, these are some of the things. And if someone is not satisfied with the decision that has been made by the High Court, we have avenues of appeal going all the way to the Supreme Court. And this is what we have decided for ourselves. We have said that our judges at the High Court are not all-knowing. Sometimes they can fall into error. We have decided let us have a court of appeal. And then we have said we will not allow one man or one woman to decide on that matter. Let us have 3. But even with the 3, we have said that there are also people with imperfections. They can always err. We have said let us go to the Supreme Court where we have 7 men and women. But to that extent, let us always give room to our constitutional democracy to grow. The problem we are having with this country is looking at the law as an inconvenience. The law is there. It has been formed for the purpose of giving us a prediction so that we can predict the future.
I want to have a question here. You know, what we are discussing,
yes,
it is right, but this is what is happening. But we are discussing what ought to happen. It is different because it's talking about the realistic thing. But what I'm discussing is what ought to happen, because now we have caught ourselves in this mess. For example, a court of appeal or a Supreme Court comes to declare 2023 finance bill unconstitutional. This is a finance bill that has already been implemented for 2 years, for example. You know, some of these decisions should be taken at the right time. I mean, I'm questioning an issue where 2023 finance bill, which government has implemented, Troy's money has been pushed to fund some housing levy somewhere for 2 years, then the courts come to declare it unconstitutional. Yes, I agree this is unconstitutional. The court is right. But timing. What happens? What about if Troy goes back to court and say, refund me back the money? So the government is supposed to refund those monies. Because if it was declared unconstitutional. And now, if we can operate like that, imagine I'm teaching at a university, and then the university something declares that I was not a lecturer for 10 years that I taught there. That means the students who passed in my class are all their results are declared.
They are quacks.
They are quacks. You get me right? We should have gotten a system to know at time by time that this was not right. For example, what I'm talking about, and I promise you'll call me here again, this discussion we are having, we are not going to arrive at a chairman because one thing, the commissioners won't be accepted.
Okay.
Because
I think we're jumping the gun. There's just been sworn in yesterday.
Can I just finish something?
Yes.
Already I can see people preparing, political systems preparing to reject the elections.
All right.
So
we really don't want to speculate.
That crystal ball to see what's coming tomorrow.
Yes. And Doc, we are talking about the installation of IEBC is purely a part of electoral reforms. What exactly should we be looking at or prioritizing or strengthening? Because we've had issues from voter registration, we've had issues during matter security.
Yes.
People talking about
constitutionally, there are three things
free and fair.
There are three things that must be done as soon as we constitute the commission. One are matters related to the constitution itself, where we have to do the review of boundary, or rather boundary reviews. Secondly, we need to look at issues of by-elections, which are very critical in nature. We need to look at issues of reforms that is geared towards a better election processing for 2027. And of course, in that context, preparation for 2027 must also be started now and initiated very well. And above all, I tend to think we must keep politics away from IEBC. We must give them the independence they need for them to execute their jobs effectively.
Can you apply for the job?
Wamboy, I'm looking at the reforms that we have. Oscar, I'm looking at the reforms that we have, and especially installing an IEBC. And let's be very hopeful, because we really need this, because we are looking at 90 days, let's say for another 1 month. So we're hopeful that in the next 4 months we'll be having a functional IEBC. From where you sit, because we've had 4 chairmen who, as I said earlier on, have been both praised and also castigated in equal measure, how do we ensure that we have a free, fair, balanced, secure election? Because we seem to have issues. Sometimes it's the server, sometimes it's the registration, sometimes it's the gadgets that we use. How can we ensure that we have proper electoral reforms to ensure that looking at 2027, looking at boundaries delimitation, looking at by-elections, we have a credible IEBC, just like Martha Koome said yesterday?
Well, it is important that we put to context that, the panel that has been or was sworn in yesterday has within 90 days to complete its assignment. So it means they can do it, the way they were doing it during the removal of Rigathi Gachagua. They can even do it within a week and then we are done. Yes. So it is very possible for us to do it very expeditiously and for us to have a commission even within the next 2 or 3 months. It is very possible. It depends largely with, the rules that they form. Because the first order of business, and I think that should be done today, or it was even done yesterday, the first order of business is for the selection panel to decide who amongst themselves is going to be the chair and who is going to be the vice chair. Then secondly, after making that decision, is to come up with their own independent rules, saying that we are going to do this and this and this within this certain time. So if they have someone as experienced probably as, Kokimuli, because she's very experienced in these matters, if she takes up the responsibility of either chair or vice chair and they are able to come up with rules very quickly, then I think we can do this process very quickly. Then when it comes to the question about the castigation and the praises that are given by people of the Republic of Kenya, to these commissioners and the chair of the IEBC, well, our system is one that does not reward the second. We do not reward the first runners up. We reward the number one. We have a system we make reference to as the first past the post. So it means if you have 10 million and this one, your number 2 has about 9 million and some 100,000, we will never have recognition to this person who has 9 million people. And that is the problem with our constitutional democracy. But you know, we do not have any other. So this is the only one that we have where the number 2 is taken as an equal to the last one in the election. Because there is no reward for those people.
Yeah.
And that is why you will hear people castigating and praising the commissioners in equal measure because of the dissatisfaction that comes with a very competitive process. We do not have a win-win solution. And I think this is for the same reason that I heard the president some time back, not even this current, even the former, when we had the introduction of the BBI, the amendments, the preferred amendments in the constitution, they were to include the loser of the election as a certain state officer in the government, so that we have now like the office of the opposition.
The official opposition.
Yes, the official opposition.
Yes.
This was also to help us in mitigating some of the consequences that come with a democratic process. But well, let us just say it as it is. We will continue having the IEBC commissioners being castigated and praised in equal measures, even in the forthcoming elections. I think the only thing that they have to give to Kenyans is to be accountable in the process, to be effective communicators. It is important that they tell you you have lost with 10,000 votes, as opposed to having a commissioner, as we had in the year 2007.
Just a minute.
As we had in the year 2007, when a whole chair of a commission is asked who won the election, and they say, I don't know.
Yes,
you know, yes, we need to have that in mind, so that moving forward, we abide by the national values and principles that we have under Article 10 of our
I have
Constitution.
an hypothesis question.
Yes, and also, still on the same, can we touch on the electoral body, how it can adapt to evolving trends? We have politics that are evolving. Actually, we're already in a political mood as we speak. And also the technological advancement that we have. Because you remember the 2022 elections, even the observer said it was free and fair. Despite the fact that a number of cases were lodged, arguably it was free and fair. So how can we pick up from there and ensure, because you could read the Form 34As from the systems, how can we make sure that indeed we are not back to where we are, where every time we are castigating the referee?
The person who messes up the election is the commission. Yeah, they normally do illegal things. For example, according to our constitution, there's no tallying, there's no returning, not returning, there's no polling station at the Bomas of Kenya. It's illegal. It was erected by Chebukati. It was an illegal polling station. There's nothing like that in the constitution. According to, Kiarie case, 2013, the voting and the election ends at the polling station. So the RO is the chief person there. We should get those votes from there, and Bomas only tallies. For example, now we're going to be discussing about the selection process of the chairmanship of IEBC. Will you accept to allow a Kalenjin to become a chairman of the IEBC, for example?
I have no problem. I have school with them.
No, I'm saying this. You might be having, it's okay, because you think there can be somebody with integrity. But I think being that our president is a Kalenjin, and sometimes you just need to be very practical. If you get a super guy whom you think will be independent and he comes from the same extraction as the president of the day, then the people will definitely reject. Because we are a tribal, we mobilize based on our tribes. That is the truth of the matter. If you get somebody who is a Kikuyu, for example, now, the people will reject, say no, but he might be very independent, a professor of this independent, of electoral, who probably has run elections elsewhere. But the way we mobilize for political experience in the country is mostly tribal. So even when we start this process, when they say Adams Olu should leave the commission, for example, to me, I think it comes from the wrong extraction, for example. You get me right? So already we are politicizing the process. And now when these people go to court, for example, the case that has been launched in Kiambu, that there are two Kambas and 2 Kalenjins. Look at that case, for example. These are independent people. Already we are saying there are 2 Kambas and 2 Kalenjins. So that panel should not be constituted, for example. We will never move when we keep on doing this one. When we see the second name and we say, okay, we've already, there's prejudice, you've been judged. You can never be independent in such a system. For example, I teach at the university, so I'm qualified to apply for chairmanship of the. But will I be given? That's why I asked.
No, you're not qualified.
You must be a lawyer of the High Court.
Yes.
For example, 30 commissions, Troy, created. And what they created in these commissions, that somebody who becomes a chairman of IEBC must be a lawyer of the High Court, for example.
With the qualifications of a Supreme Court
With
judge.
the qualification of a Supreme Court judge.
15
this
years.
is wrong.
All right. And because of the interest of time, there's something that we also need to look at, which is very crucial, and that is matter security. And we know very well when it comes to matters politics, the chiefs are very involved on the ground. And we saw the last time that the National Government Administration Police Unit, which will be with the chiefs, and you know very well violence starts anywhere. It's just not here in Nairobi alone, or Mombasa, or Kisumu. It starts from the villages. Now the chiefs, the assistant chiefs will be having the police unit, which will be able at least to more or less like keep peace, and especially during elections.
Right, Troy, I think you have mentioned a very critical thing that relates to the general security as well as our electionary process. Before, we used to have powers at the grassroots level. The Inspector General of Police, who has established the unit that is called the National Government Administration Police Unit, that supports security affairs from the grassroots level at the chief's level, which is sublocation, and location at DC level, within the administration of the local grassroots level, had an idea. And the fact that the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Administration Police, who has grown through the system of Administration Police for him to hold that position, has made a bit of dramatic change in terms of how services, security services can be disseminated at the grassroots level. For example, this unit which has been formed had earlier on in 2018, when the administration police officers were moved to the Kenya Police Service, created a gap in providing effective and efficient services at the grassroots level, and that is where it matters. Yes. Majority of us live in the cities, and we don't even know the role of a chief. But when you go outskirt, the chief plays everything when it comes to matters of security, matters of disputes. So you will realize that this formation that they have come up with is something that has been long overdue. And now the fact that it has come, we know if this is implemented, you will realize that government policies will be implemented at the grassroots level. The chiefs have been made redundant. People with certain uniform, security uniform, but with no teeth. Then you will realize that there is also alternative dispute resolution, where the chief used to sit there with his security apparatus and adjudicate between the conflict between the parties. This has disappeared, and the people could not access justice even at the grassroots level. There are people who cannot travel to the nearest police station simply because the chief is there. The only person they hope to help their problem is this particular, for example, decentralization of government services across down there. Yeah. And finally, I think there's one point that is very crucial, is that you remember chiefs have experienced challenges. They have been instructed to execute the mandate of removing alcohol issues, drugs, and these other things. And yet, he has no forces to support him. And therefore, I think this process that the Deputy Inspector General of Administration Police will be heading is a process that is, I think we see the light in terms of security services going to the grassroots level.
Allow me to give you 30 seconds each for your closing statement, and also you can maybe touch on the role of even civil societies, us as the media, because we also need to educate the public in regards to electoral matters, and also informing the public on their electoral rights. Oscar.
Yeah, I think for us to, from what Kome has said, for us to move, we must make sure we fix our electoral processes, we fix our electoral procedures. And for us to fix electoral procedures, Kenyans themselves must take it upon themselves to make sure that we do something differently. But if we keep on going with these litigations in court and the political machinations, interference, we will never move. If we don't move and get an electoral system that works for us, we can never move on as a country. And everybody must be involved as a stakeholder, the media, the civil society, and everybody else. And we must be rational in all our ideas, how we make things move for ourselves.
All right, Wambui?
Well, I think the problems we've been enduring as a country, and what probably you saw as a consequence of the endurance on the 25th day of June last year, you know, the maandamano, the Gen Z revolution in this country, is largely due to a failed leadership. We have leaders that we can never trust with the responsibility of checking other leaders. Our parliamentarians have failed us to a large extent. And that should explain why the youth have been speaking on all these platforms, whether the X, Facebook, and there have been these cases of abductions. So I think as the media, as the civil society, as a people, the people who are here, we have a role and responsibility of educating Kenyans that the power lies in their vote. That indeed, this is the right time for young men and young women like myself to go out there and register. Let us take advantage. Let us take our IDs, register as voters. Let us participate actively in the elections. We have members of parliament who don't care anything about us. They only care about their big stomachs. They only care about some of the perks that they get. So we have an opportunity come the year 2027 to make right what has been perpetually made wrong in this country.
Doc, 10 seconds.
No, I think it's very clear that Kenyans are yearning for fair electoral process, and the only thing that I'll tell Kenyans is that, as the Wakili has said, they have the power with them. And the few Kenyans who like interrupting the processes, I think they should stop that. Let's serve Kenyans, and let's make sure that our election processes is credited like the way we are credited in all other aspects within this region. Because we are much better than other countries within this region, East and Central Africa. But the way we are heading to, and the way we change our goalposts, I think we may eventually end up becoming the worst. And therefore, the best thing for us is we make sure we take things constitutionally, and we do it professionally, and without having a crisis every other time on issues that we are able to solve the earliest time possible.
Indeed, indeed. And as you've said, rightly said, that a lot of countries, especially in East Africa, are really catching up with the big powerhouse that is Kenya. That is Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan, who is a leadership and governance expert. Just next to him, we had Oscar Omondi, who is a political scientist and also a university lecturer. Just next to him, we have a constitutional lawyer and also leadership and governance expert, Wambui. I don't think he's a Gen Z, but we have Shadrach Wambui. Gentlemen, thank you indeed so much for making time and for your insight as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's where we put a cap on the first hour in regards to matters IEBC reconstitution, and we are all hopeful in the 90 days that have been mandated, they will actualize a functional and actually an IEBC that will make Kenyans proud. On the second hour, remember January is the cervical cancer celebration month, and there are a lot of activities that happen during this month. So after the next 2-3 minutes, I'll also be joined by a Dr. Aurora Maranga from the Kenyatta National Hospital. We'll be telling you more about her and exactly what we'll be talking about in regards to cervical cancer. Anything that you need to ask, kindly be ready with a pen and paper. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.